I've been journaling for years, and I've gotten so much out of journaling. It allowed me to decide where I'm going in the future, to be able to process my emotions, to educate myself. There's so many different things, to be able to think more clearly and to really figure out what I actually feel about certain subjects. I developed a system called DEEP. Each of these letters stands for a different component of my journaling system, and I believe any journal, if they have all four of these, will lead the writer to become a much more transformed individual. So here are the four letters, and we'll go into each of these one by one. Now, the first letter in the system is D. With this, we can do a brain dump. We can do this within three ways. What you did that day or things that you've done in the past, you can check in on those. It could be as short as a sentence. One highlight from your day, write it down. Next thing would be feelings. If you're ever feeling slightly off of your baseline, what you normally feel, you feel a little more anxious than usual, you feel happier than usual, you feel euphoric, you feel maybe scared about something. Exploring when you're feeling off of your baseline with feelings is something you can do within the dump section of DEEP. Next, what are you avoiding? We waste so much mental effort on procrastinating and not doing the things that we should. So asking yourself, what activities am I avoiding? What have I been avoiding? And thoughts that maybe are uncomfortable for us to deal with. Inner dialogue that we push away. We can stop wasting so much brain energy and time as well by writing these down. So those are the three parts of dump. What you did, what you're feeling, and what are you avoiding. The initial step was about processing our life and emotions. The next one is going to make sure that our brain is constantly expanding and being well nourished. E for education is the second step. Now, we don't have to involve each one of these components every single time that we journal, but we want to make sure that it is present within our journal. Just that it has a presence is going to make a huge difference. Some journals are strictly diaries, and I really vouch for a well-rounded journal that can complete you as a person. So within education, we have 4 different steps. The first one is going to be quotes. Do you see any quotes while you're reading? You hear something in a YouTube video, you create a quote for yourself that you want to remind yourself of something later on. Any quote that you hear in conversation that talks to you, that speaks to your soul, it's something you can write down. Next thing is books. Making sure that you're constantly reading and then placing within your journal ideas about what comes about. The best way to have reading really stick with you and be part of your total being is when you read an idea that's interesting, maybe after your reading session, write a little bit about it. What do I feel about this? How can this relate to my life? Or just interesting ideas that the book brings up. Next, research. Find something that interests you. Everyone has their interests, and do some type of research about it and just start writing down your findings inside of your notebook. Lastly, courses. I think the number one thing you can invest within yourself is education. Education is the one thing no one can take away from you. Courses, I know a lot of them get a bad rap, and it's important to do your research beforehand, but having a section in your notebook that's dedicated to specific courses and taking notes on those, I think is something valuable that you can have in the education section of your journal. The next letter, E for essays, is one of the most powerful ones. This is going to be the one that allows you to be an independent brain that's possible and has the potential of making its own thoughts. Now, we can do essays in 3 different ways. Just imagine like you were in school when you were younger and your teacher gives you an assignment and you have to write 3 paragraphs about it. In this section, you can even make it bullet point. It doesn't need to be well structured like it was in school, but just the idea that you write an essay with supporting points about these 3 different things. Now, the first thing you can do is prompts. With prompts, you can ask yourself set out question and try to find how you truly feel about that prompt. I have a video with 11 other prompts that could be helpful, but these are really good for self-development and asking yourself about your values in life, about where your meaning is in life, and about what direction you would like to head in. Prompts are a really good way to explore that. Essays about prompts. The next thing within essays we can write about is opinions and beliefs. It's so important to question yourself and ask yourself, why do I believe what I believe? Why do I have the opinions I have? There's a quote that I heard where it's, if you can't explain why you believe something, or you don't know why you believe something, it is not your own belief. So exploring different things, and even if you're so sure, and in fact, especially when you're very sure in this specific belief, listing out the points of why you believe it, and then playing devil's advocate sometimes also can be helpful, and arguing out the opposite point, and having a dialogue and a debate between two different characters you make within your mind. Exploring things through essays, some that I was exploring recently, and it can seem silly, you don't need to show it to anyone. It can be a very basic concept. Like, for example, I was looking at why sacrifice is important and why it gives us the feeling of meaning when we sacrifice for a greater good. Why does that equal meaning? I explored that idea recently, but it could be as simple as your belief in a certain religion, your belief in God, your political stance, writing out your opinions. And when you write things out, it allows you to be the supercomputer where instead of just thinking, okay, one step ahead, you can lay down an idea, lay down like a brick as if you're building a foundation, and then you set it there. And then it's on the page and you don't need to hold it into your mind anymore. You can look at it and then build the next brick off of that, and again, set it on the page, and then you can move on to the next step. And you can do this to infinity, and then you start really knowing why you believe certain things. You develop the logic portions of your brain, and then you just become a person that thinks a little bit deeper about the things and opinions and beliefs that you hold. Now, the last component of the DEEP system is P for planning. We can plan in a few ways, the ways I like to plan, and I just think in general it's good to have some idea, or even an exact, very clear idea of where you're heading within your life. We can do this within a few ways. One would be writing out your 5-year or 10-year goals, something really big. Write about it in specific detail. Spend some time on this. Quarterly goals for each quarter of the year. I find it to be a lot better to plan instead of for the entire year, to plan for each quarter. So quarterly planning, weekly, and then daily, and you can have that all within your journal. Progress metrics, so checking in on past plans. I said I wanted to read this many books this month. Checking in on that. How many did I read? I wanted to go to the gym this many times a week. Checking back in on that metric. How many times did I go? Checking in on metrics is a powerful thing. Doing 20-80 assessments is another thing where you can do, where there's Pareto's principle, where 20% of what you do leads to 80% of the positive results, and vice versa. 20% of the negative actions you do lead to 80% of the bad things happening within your life. So checking in on what is the 20% that's giving me the 80% of rewards, and removing everything else that isn't that 20%, or spending as much time as possible within that 20%. These are a few ways that we can go about planning. Focusing on the future, writing out what would your ideal future look like, and writing in detail. There is power in visualization. There is power in knowing where you're going in life. If you enjoyed this video, here's a different video on ways that you can use your journal to really push you forward.